Welcome everybody to Enhancing the Accountant Bookkeeper Connection series featuring Jonathan Carter from KATA Accounting. So hello, I think everybody on the call knows me, but for anybody who may not, who's watching this replay afterwards, I am Tanya Hills. I am a certified professional bookkeeper as well as an accredited impactful advisor. And I am here because I am passionate about collaboration. And you can find me at Tanya's Bootcamp on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Little bit about myself is I received my accredited impactful advisor designation in 2021. I'm also a level 5 certified advisor through the Mentor Plus program under the tutelage of Jeannie Whitehouse. Insightful Accountant Top 100 ProAdvisor for 2018, 19, 20, and 21, and the Top Canadian ProAdvisor for 2020. Into a Global Firm of the Future for 2018, a volunteer mentor through Futurepreneur Canada and Women in Accounting, a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network, a director of CPB Canada, and founder of Cloud Business Services and Tanya's Bookkeepers Bootcamp, to name a few. So I think I'm still using the same quote as last time. I apologize for this if I did not update it. But of course, I love to look at quotes that are really reflective of the topic. And this just really spoke to me. Henry Ford, founder of the Ford Motor Company, said, if everyone is moving forward together, then success takes care of itself. And I really believe this. And this is why I love working with Jonathan. He really believes this. And he is actually my accountant as well for our firm. So yeah, so just thought I would throw that out there as well too. That's how much trust I have in him. And a few other people are saying that they are his as well. So very popular guy, but it's because of his collaboration. He has helped me become better at my job, which is better to the clients, just simply because of the collaboration and the explaining why. And hopefully that means that the work that I give to him makes his life easier as well, because I know exactly what he's looking for. So yes, so this webinar does qualify for CPD credits through CPB Canada. There will be 2 polls that must both be answered in order to qualify, and a recording of the webinar and your CPD credits will be emailed within 2 days. So we of course have Jonathan Carter, who is the founder and principal accountant of KATA Accounting Solutions. And we've been collaborating with Jonathan and his team for a number of years. We've got multiple mutual clients. We give currently, 2, potentially 3 names, sometimes depending on the situation. Jonathan is always the #1 name that we give for people to be able to speak with, and he works in QBO. I love the fact that, him and his team, have great, outstanding customer service and a high level and expectations of attention to detail. So, Jonathan, I will stop sharing so that you can take it away.
Thanks, Tanya. Let me just share my screen. So who am I to be speaking about to you guys today? I'm the founder of KATA Accounting Solutions, a professional corporation. I was a member of the inaugural Intuit Accountants Council. I was very fortunate to be a part of that. Had a long-standing relationship with Intuit, still consult with them on things from time to time. I was the recipient of the 2018 Inspire Accountant Award. That was extremely impactful to me personally. It was the first major award we received, and we're also elite ProAdvisors. I am QBO Advanced certified, as are several members of the team, and everybody in our team is QBO Basic certified. And I was Insightful Accountant, made the list of the top 100 ProAdvisors for 2021. As Tanya mentioned, I'm a trusted advisor for several cloud bookkeeping firms. As a firm, we like to work with technology companies, a lot of coaches, consultants, content creators, those kind of things. And I am considered a thought leader in accounting and technology. We love collaborating. It's very important. Tanya's helped us get better too. And we were just collaborating on something over the holidays that, we got some good feedback, I think both ways, about how we can improve our own systems. So it was really impactful, and working with good professionals has helped us become better. It's helped us create better processes, and it helps us produce better quality work. So today we're going to talk about financial statements, financial information, and assurance. What we're really noticing, and I actually got another email in my inbox just now about somebody who now is asking for financial statements when they didn't ask us to produce financial statements. And to give an idea, when we do the tax, it's quite easy to go from tax to financial statements. When you have to go back, a year or years later and recreate the financial statements, it takes a lot more work. That's why we bundle together. If you want financial statements, we do them when we do the tax return, because it can be cheaper for the customer, and it's easier for us to execute on. When somebody orders them kind of a la carte, so to speak, it does cost more. So really what we're talking about here is knowing your customer, knowing what you can provide, and knowing what the accountant should be providing. So just our agenda today. So what are they? What is financial information? What are financial statements? We're going to talk about those two things, as well as the new CPA standard. This is the Canadian standard on related services, 4200. You got to love how they create all these different very well named or long named items. We're going to talk about assurance engagements, and what your customer needs. And then hopefully we'll have a good Q&A and discussion. And I warn you, there is going to be significant accountingese in this one. So by all means, ask questions when they come up. So the first question: which of the following statements require a licensed public accountant? Audited financial statements, compiled financial statements, notice to reader financial statements, or reviewed financial statements, or A and D?
Okay, obviously, so I've moved on to the poll. Obviously, D, where it says reviewed financial statement, it has "I will buy a Mercedes."
Oh my gosh. Okay, so that is not truly the option.
That I think had to do with the next poll that we have. And obviously when I set it up, I maybe it was too late at night. So in place of, when we read "I will buy a Mercedes Benz," replace that with D, reviewed financial statements, please.
Yes. This was from the last webinar when we
It was
did
in the
goals and
last one,
resolutions.
so I updated all of them except for that one. Amy says she would love a Benz.
She just got a nice new vehicle. Well, newish.
Well, we've got 7 people that have picked. No, yeah, zero. Okay, yeah, 0 people have picked that. But oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You know what? It just goes to show that we're all human. Absolutely, no matter what, we are all human, and we all make mistakes, no matter how well we think we can, that we've double checked this, and nobody out there is exempt from this. And hey, it's very clear right there. Tanya failed on her editing. Anyway, so we've got 8 of 10. I think you and I, Jonathan, are the last 2, but as panelists, we don't qualify anyway. So I will just confirm that both of these must be answered in order to receive the CPD credits. So just in case there is somebody, and we'll do a countdown from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. End the poll. So I hope D was not the answer, because nobody picked D.
The answer was A and D.
It was, so we had 50% selected A and 38% selected A and D.
So well done. Well done. There are different types of accountants, like lawyers, there's, like doctors, there are different types of accountants. A licensed public accountant is specifically licensed to do reviewed financial statements and audited financial statements. Our firm is not a licensed public accounting firm, so we can only do as far as compiled financial statements. Notice to reader financial statements are no more. So if you start seeing things that are notice to reader financial statements for any year end after December 14th, 2021, that is inappropriate. It really should be a compiled financial statement covered by Csrs 4200, which we'll get into in a bit. So let's talk about the difference, first of all, between financial statements and financial information. This is where we get a bit accountingese. So the financial information is what comes out of the accounting and bookkeeping systems. It's what management uses to make decisions. It's what they're going to be reviewing on a regular basis, things like that. Financial statements are prepared by an accountant, typically, for external parties. There is no rule about compiled financial statements must be completed by an accountant, but we are, as accountants, covered by this standard, so we must do that. And then Of course, audited and reviewed financial statements add levels of surety that the quality of the information is accurate. So we'll get into that a bit more in a moment. Just the big thing is watch for people getting notice to reader statements if their year end is after December 14, 2021. After that point, if it's coming from an accountant, that accountant is not up to date on the new standard, and those statements really should not be being produced. So financial information is a broad scope of things, but beyond your bookkeeping system. It's also going to include the source documents. One thing that's big is schedules, contracts, and leases. And that's something that we're going to talk about when it comes to knowing your client and what they need. Schedules could be just a spreadsheet, but this could be something used for reporting to the Ministry of Health, for instance, or reporting to the Ministry of Education, or some kind of other body that's providing a grant or something like that. Quite often you have to produce these kind of spreadsheet information. Also included in there is the corporate record book, which we've talked about before. And the key that I want to draw your attention to here are the key legal agreements, because what we're finding is a lot of people don't know what they need. And it's really important. And one way we can help our customers is by reading these things and understanding. So if there's a loan agreement, is there a covenant for, say, for instance, audited financial statements? That might be a deal breaker when it comes to a loan agreement. Why would you take a loan for $10,000 if it comes with a $10,000 accounting fee to get audited financial statements? So these are things that you can do to help your customer, and really just reviewing the agreements that they are entering or have already entered to determine what they need. We've had some things come back this year where the customer needed something and didn't realize they needed it until well after. And now, of course, you're in crunch time and you're suffering from an accounting emergency, with the air quotes, because they weren't prepared in the first place. If they had known what they needed, it would have been done already. So financial information can be used to create financial statements, prepare taxes, help with budgeting and forecasting, make pricing decisions, purchase decisions, staffing decisions, all kinds of decision-making support. It can be used for management accounting and reporting, and of course, third-party accounting and reporting. So I can't recall, it might have been Amy who showed me this the other day or a while ago, but the management reports in QBO are pretty interesting. And I like very much that they say very clearly that they are for the use of management alone. So I see, it was you. Okay, awesome, Amy. So financial statements are intended for third parties, lenders, investors, regulators, and they essentially have three forms: the audited financials, the highest level of assurance; the reviewed financials, which are kind of in between; and compiled financials, which the underlying financial information is 100% solely the responsibility of management. So if they give us bad information and we produce compiled financial statements, as the accountant, we have no liability. We are not responsible for how they did their bookkeeping and what numbers they gave us. They are 100% responsible for that. So let's talk about Csrs 4200. This was an interesting and very controversial thing. When it first came out, there was a lot of stuff that was deal breakers that they ended up walking back. At one point, we thought we were going to need a compilation engagement for every single tax return we did for both self-employed and incorporated organizations. So I'm really glad that they walked it back. So it doesn't apply in the following situations. You're engaged to perform bookkeeping services. You're engaged to prepare a tax return. The statements are being audited or reviewed by another firm, or it's just a report that you're producing for a regulatory body to assist in litigation, to do planning or help in evaluation. So the key question for the compilation engagement is, who is the audience, right? So we can't produce general purpose financial statements under this standard. They have to be done in a manner that speaks to the audience for whom they are being prepared for. So that's something very important to consider. And the accountant might not be able to perform a compilation engagement if they don't know who the intended audience of the financial statements are. So this standard will always apply if an accounting firm decides to issue a communication to company financial statements and that addresses the third party's needs and interpretation of the statement. There is revised language that we have to use. And I can go into that if you want, but really it doesn't make sense. A lot of that is available in the QBO work paper. They have done that update, and the revised language is there on the compiled financial statements letter. So one big change is we can't do just a notice to reader statement that wouldn't have any notes. Now there must be notes. And the most important one is the note about how the accounting and bookkeeping was done. So CPA has been very, very vocal about cautioning that rarely do statements meet the threshold of accounting standards for private enterprise, essentially Canadian GAAP, and one should be 100% sure that that is true before saying so. There is specific language also that has been released about what that note, what different forms that note can look like. If you do Google CSRS notes or CSRS 4200 notes, you should be able to find that language quite easily. But essentially, what it's saying is, how is the bookkeeping done? So it's done on a cash basis with select accruals, is done on accrual basis, different questions like that. So it really involves the accountant more in speaking with the customer and understanding how their books and records are being kept, which means the customer needs to know more about how their books and records are being kept so they can actually understand what's being discussed. So I just feel like I just blathered on a whole bunch of accountanese. I'm really shocked that there aren't any questions, but I will continue. So some information about how to apply this new standard. You have to obtain management's acknowledgement on the basis of accounting that is expected to be applied. This we're going to be doing in writing in our firm. It can be done verbally and then notated, but I would recommend to do it in writing. We have to know what is the intended use of the compiled financial information. There has to be an engagement letter, of course, and then you have to obtain the understanding of the company, its environment that operates in, and then compile the financial information from the bookkeeping system. Then we have to discuss with management the judgments which we've assisted in making. Now we aren't making those judgments anymore. We have to make sure that they're in agreement with those judgments. We have to read the compiled financial information and bring the to the attention of management any matters that are of concern. And then finally, and most importantly, again, management has to acknowledge that they're 100% responsible for the final version of the compiled financial information. Again, it is their responsibility for us to go digging into the transactions and being like, oh, well, this item here in travel is really meals and entertainment. These, gifts are really shareholder loan. We are not supposed to do that. In fact, in the past, back when I first started, I kind of got slapped on the wrist by CPA for digging too deep into books. And this creates an additional level of frustration for bookkeepers and for customers because we're asking questions we can research and figure out ourselves, but we have to get the answer from the customer. So that's really where it comes from. So let's talk about assurance engagements just briefly. I feel like things are going really, really fast, and I'm shocked there are no questions. So compilation engagement, this is the new notice to reader. Again, applies to anything after December 14th, 2021. There's no assurance whatsoever with these statements. The information is 100% the responsibility of management. A review engagement, there's limited assurance. They do some testing to ensure that the financial information appears to be sound. And then the audit engagement, of course, is the highest level of assurance and significant testing is done. We have seen just actually yesterday, CPA released their disciplinary actions, and almost all of them had to do with audit engagements that were not being properly undertaken. And yet, of course, the customer is getting a big bill and getting an unqualified audit opinion. Actually, I should talk about that for a moment. When maybe the testing hasn't been done and the generally accepted auditing standards haven't been adhered to. So when you get an audit, you can get a qualified or an unqualified opinion. An unqualified opinion is generally what you want. Some types of industries often are kind of the standard is a qualified opinion. And that particularly shows up in not-for-profits, churches, for example, because they can't say exactly where all their money came from. And that's what the qualification is based on. So like, passing around the collection tray, how do you know who puts in how much money? It's impossible. So you do get a qualified opinion in that realm quite often. And you might find that if you're working with an accountant who is, 100% above board, they might pull out of an engagement if they find something fishy. If they find that, the owner has been taking money and saying that it was, an expense, that could create some concern for an auditor or a review engagement, and they might actually withdraw. I do see some questions here. So, yeah, Amy, definitely. We have to ask. The reason I got in trouble was because we weren't asking. We were going into the records and figuring out the answers for ourselves, noting it in our work papers, and CPA was like, you have to get the answer from the bookkeeper, from management. You should not be answering these questions yourself. Is there a standard? So this is from Stacy. Is there a standard letter that I could put together that answers all the anticipated questions from the accountant? Or is there a list of questions that they would be asking that I can preemptively answer? Stacy, I'm happy to send you our bookkeeper's checklist. I know that Tanya has a very good copy as well. And that was the item we were conferring on over the holidays. And she's really got some good mechanisms in place to kind of pre-prepare for any kind of things like this, to provide the documents before they're asked, things along those lines. I can give you some of that stuff. But what often happens, or almost always happens, is even when we get that, we still end up having some questions. Usually it's very rare where it's like, oh my God, this is 100% perfect. I have no questions. It's very clear. Another person who has a very good year-end package, a couple other people who have very good year-end packages are Juliet and of course Terry and Connie. They all have very good year-end packages as well. So a good year-end package, I think, can cover a lot of what the accountant will be asking about.
Yeah, and I just want to pop in and confirm that for Stacy, that is the most recent one that is actually in the Bootcamp toolkit. It's the spreadsheet, and yeah, we talked about it at one point. It is in there, and yes, that's exactly. And that started actually from Jonathan's initially, and then I took it a couple steps further and then sent it back to him, and so now they're taking it a few steps further and whatnot. So yeah, so that is it, and as we get feedback, it'll definitely be tweaked. So, but for Amy and Stacy, we've got that. And you know what? I'm going to put that out. Shailen's asking if we can purchase it somewhere. I'm just going to include it in here. I will bring that. Was there any changes you wanted to add to that, Jonathan, or just put it in here?
Sorry, I was reading the next question.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. No, just my year-end checklist. And there are certain things, just to let people know, certain things that's available in Bootcamp, because this is not 100% me. It has come from Jonathan and from collaboration. I absolutely have no problem putting that out to everybody on here, and I'm not going to charge for that because, again, that's not something that's 100% me. It's been done from a collaboration, and this workshop is on collaboration. So do you feel that that is fine then, just to share as it was, as we sent to you at this stage? Like, it's pretty comprehensive.
Absolutely. I mean, the more you can do, the better. I mean, no system is going to be 100% perfect. I do want to address Stacy's comment. She says, I get that you always have to ask something, like in an audit, they always have to have at least one adjusting journal entry because they have to prove that they're doing their job. It may seem like that. Sometimes it does have to do with something that is an appropriate adjustment. Sometimes it could be, finding something and reclassifying, and that is their only adjusting entry. Usually it's things like depreciation, accruals, prepaids, things like that. One other thing to mention about an audit, especially if you're working with an auditing team, like from the Big Five, sometimes they'll ask different people the same question. And what they're trying to find is consistency of response. So sometimes, like, they might ask the CFO, like, if everything's being reconciled, for instance. And then they'll go ask the accounting clerk if everything's being reconciled. Quite often what happens, the accounting clerk will defer to the more senior people and so on and so forth. But yeah, sometimes they're asking the question 2 or 3 times to see if they get a different answer. I know I encountered that and found that very frustrating. So Charlene had asked about purchasing that somewhere. I think she's talking about the checklist.
Yeah.
Tanya, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I did. I'm going to go look and make sure that I've got the most recent one, and then I'll upload it here so that everybody live can absolutely grab it. And yeah, and this is, and this is kind of where Jonathan and I went with this, because I'm like, oh, we're duplicating a lot of information when we do the books. And yeah, that's where this conversation went, that here's what we go through. So some of it can absolutely be removed, and some of it still is in there for legal purposes. And, I can absolutely respect that you've got to, cover your own butt, right? So, yeah.
I was going to say one other thing about, as a result of our work together on this over the past month, Tanya, we've actually adjusted our processes. So we're not sending our bookkeeping checklist to everybody anymore. Now we're asking, do we need to? Have they already provided a good year-end file, a bunch of answers and so on? Because there's no point in asking somebody to fill out additional paperwork when they've already provided pretty much the same thing. Now that means there might be additional questions, but at least there's not an additional form that needs to be completed before we can start our work.
And that's very much appreciated. Absolutely. Because yeah, the clients either get frustrated or don't know how to answer some of that because we do it all, or we answer it and it's like, yeah, see file, see file, see file, see file,
yeah.
Right. So very much appreciated. And again, this is why I love collaborating with you, because it's just, hey, if something's not working, let's talk about it. And yes, if there's some of that stuff that you have to ask, you know what, at least I understand why. And I'm not like, oh, Jonathan just making my life more difficult. No, Jonathan doesn't want to make your life more difficult. Jonathan just wants to do things properly and not just try to like poke the bear and tick you off, right? Jonathan's a nice guy. I think so.
What's
anyway,
the point?
He's a very good friend too. So anyway,
what's the point, right? Like sometimes, yeah, it's just like Tanya said, it's covering your butt. So for instance, getting the shareholder to sign off on the shareholder loan, we're going to ask that every time because we need to have that response from them before they come back and say, oh, this shouldn't be in shareholder loan. And I would strongly recommend, if you aren't already, reviewing that shareholder loan with your customer on a regular basis, as that could definitely provide some some added quality to the books.
And if I can just add to that, how we do this internally is we've gone into QBO, because of course we only use QBO, but I'm sure whatever you use, you can set up something similar. But we have a report that automatically goes out, and we set it to go out quarterly, and like 15 days after we usually have the quarter closed or something like that. And it actually does have the exact same thing in there. So we don't have to do it because again, it's got the automation, but it goes out and it says, please review this. This is your, for the full year. So we say we want it within that fiscal year. It's also part of the checklist to make sure to send to them separately. And it says in there that, please review this. And if they want something changed, if they don't feel that it should be in here, it's either in here because they didn't give us a receipt or an answer on it. Because again, we like to have source documents for everything. Or we feel that we don't agree with their reason to have it in there. So we will put it in there and we'll say, great, you don't agree it's in here. Like we had a client who bought apparently for their office manager, but as soon as I said, well, I'd like the office manager to sign off on that, then that they received it, and they said no, because we knew they bought it for his girlfriend, but it was a personal hair removal system. You
Oh my
don't buy
gosh.
that for your office manager. I am sorry. So we put it in there
It's
and I said,
bloody horrible.
I know, right? So I'm like, it's in shareholders. And he says, no, 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 move it. And I said, you know what? No, we are responsible for this part of the book. We will put the notes in there and you can have that discussion with your accountant. Your accountant's the one that does the tax return. The buck is going to stop with them. They can decide, have that conversation as to whether this truly is or not, and whether they're willing to move that over. Now, I'll tell you, that accountant actually just checked in with me and asked my reasoning and actually stood behind it anyway, which was kind of surprising because apparently she'd done everything for him in the past. But you know, you can do that. And we send it to them and we say, if there's anything that they want to have removed out of there, they can either pay us extra because they didn't give us the correct information in the meantime. So we can do it quarterly, we can do it at year end, or they can pay their accountant extra to do it because their accountant's still going to pay. It's going to be charged. The bigger the list, the more you have to go through, the more they're going to pay. And that is in there so that they can contact it quarterly. They can save it for year end. They can talk to the accountant. They have their choices. The way to avoid extra fees, which we tell them in the email as well, of course, is to give us the correct information in the first place when we ask for it within the 21 days that we allow for that. But that's been a really, really good flow. And then again, which you'll see once I get this checklist uploaded, we just kind of do a last check with them before everything goes off to the accountant. And just that way, it just again makes sure everything is clean. And we use that description. So if there is something in there that we'll put in there that we want the accountant to see, that's in there. And then you'll see in this spreadsheet that I put in, there's also a spot that we can put our notes that we want the accountant to see as well. And then the accountant can make their own decision because again, accountant seeing the tax return, it's not on us, but now it doesn't show in the audit trail that we've moved it. So we have our foundation for any conversations with CRA. The accountant can make their decision to have their foundation and their covering up. So that's just the process we follow here and it works well. And again, it's automatic, so we don't have to do anything about it.
I do want to say one quick thing about that, about the buck stopping with the accountant. That's not really true.
Well, no,
whoever signs the taxes, that's where the buck stops.
Well, it
the supporting
does, but
information is the responsibility of management.
But at the end of the day, if you truly believe, again, that something is not, you're still not going to move that over. Like you might,
and I mean, we assist with judgment.
You might tell the client to go use another accountant if they don't agree with you. That's your ethical. That's your ethical, decision to make on some of those things, whether you want to accept them without source documents, whatever. And that's your conversation. So when I say that, that's kind of what I meant, that's where that final conversation should be taking place, is with the person who's actually doing the tax return. And it's going to depend on, because you're right, I had actually expected for that other accountant to not question it and put it through. And I was actually really surprised when she did. I'm like, what, really? I've seen some of the stuff you've put through in the past. You've never questioned it before. So I don't know if it's just if she never checked, if she decided to stop listening to the client. I don't know what, I didn't ask. Because again,
fair enough,
doesn't stop with me. It's the last thing is at the tax return, but and whatever you're comfortable with anyway.
So just going to take a quick step back. We do assist in judgment calls, but we aren't making those judgment calls. So we might, have a conversation with management, and management is insisting that something be done. We're not responsible for the books and records. We're not responsible for the underlying financial information. If that person chooses to do that against our advice, we have options. We can express a reservation. We can, just if it's immaterial, just kind of, okay, whatever, that's hands off. But when the person signs the tax return, they're responsible. I feel zero pity for these stories of people who went to an accountant whose fee was like half their refund or something, because not everybody deserves a refund. People who are signing off on their taxes without reviewing them, and then something happens later, you can't blame whoever prepared the taxes. They're your taxes. In the end, the responsibility lies with the taxpayer. CRA is going to say that, and so is tax court. So just a couple of things there. Anyway, moving on. So this is one thing that I really want to emphasize. This is where you can really add value. Knowing your customer. The cost of different levels of engagements can vary a lot. And it always, generally, almost always costs more to go back and do it after the fact. At the same time, you don't want your customer paying for something they don't need, and you don't want them agreeing to do something they don't need to do. Like we talked about the example of audited financial requirements for a very small value loan, doesn't make sense. If you can get a review engagement instead of an audit engagement, review engagements tend to be cheaper. To give you an idea, I'd say the low end would be about 5,000 for a review engagement, maybe 8,000 for an audit. But compiled financial statements, not including tax return, you're probably looking at about $1,000. So it's a very different level of work required and a very different level of responsibility for the accountant. So if the customer does not get the proper level of engagement, they can end up in bad situations where, say it's a bank covenant, the bank could call the loan if they don't meet their covenant. Or if it's with a regulatory body, they could lose licensing or lose funding. So having a look at major agreements and the involvement with the regulatory bodies is very important, and will usually spell out the level of engagement required. Something that's really nice about it is it's usually summarized very clearly in the document. So quite often you don't have to go through every single line and understand 100%, but what level of service are they going to need? So, oh, I see Tanya shared the checklist. So awesome. So there is potential impairment for independence. If there is any potential impairment of independence, it has to be disclosed in the compilation report. And it doesn't matter if you think it's an impairment, it's if somebody else, anybody who looked at it could view it as an impairment. So an investment in the customer, no matter how small, or a personal, maybe familial relationship with the customer, those need to be disclosed 100%. So for instance, we have one customer who I own less than 1% of the company, but I have to disclose that in when I prepare their this year compiled financial statements. So let's pretty much the same question as before, but hopefully now everybody gets the right one. Which engagement must be performed by a licensed public accountant? Audit, review, and compilation engagements, audit and review engagements, audit, review, compilation engagements, and provision of management reports, compilation engagements, and provision of management reports, or all of the above.
And sorry, no Mercedes-Benz option on this one. But yeah, if we have time at the end, I'm certainly, happy to open the template and just, do a quick 2-minute review as to what we kind of do with each of the pages. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but yeah, absolutely. So, and just a reminder that both polls must be answered in order to qualify for CPD. And we've got 9 out of 10, and that's not including us. So there's one more person. So we'll give them the countdown from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. End the poll and share the results.
Oh, yes. Audit and review engagements must be performed by a licensed public accountant. You can provide management reporting straight out of QuickBooks. That's essentially what it's going to be used for most of the time. Compilation engagement can be performed by somebody who's not a licensed public accountant, such as me. There's no rule that says that it has to be done by an accountant. However, you want to ask yourself if you want to be doing that work and learning these standards and going through this process, if that's what you're going to be producing. Otherwise, the management report section can produce a lot of really slick looking, nice looking stuff that can possibly be used for whatever the needs might be. So I also forgot to change the quote, but I think this is appropriate because we see this a lot. People are like, I just need taxes done. I just need the taxes. I want to pay the lowest amount possible. So we just do the taxes. And then a year later, they come by and it's like, the bank is asking for my financial statements. We didn't produce financial statements. You have financial information in your QuickBooks system, see if they'll take that. And if not, then you can engage us to do it, but it's going to take us a month. And you know, I'm just saying a month, it might be faster, it might be slower, but it has to be, we have a process we have to follow, and it's going to end up costing more doing it well after the fact. So one thing I just want to talk about, we are known for our collaboration. Of course, don't hesitate to reach out to me or to us. Here's all our main socials. We do have a YouTube channel, so I'm going to have to update that at some point, though there's not much there. But one thing I want to talk about real quickly was some of the different things we've seen where people do end up needing something more than what they have. So one is going for BDC funding. BDC is going to require some degree of financial statement, be that a compiled financial statement, the old notice to reader, audited, reviewed. Typically, for funding, they're not looking for audited or reviewed, although when it hits a certain dollar level, they will be. And the loan that comes with it may be accompanied by a covenant for, say, audited financial statements. Another one we've seen is, I believe it's the Women's Entrepreneurship Fund. Some of those agreements require audited or reviewed financial statements. So if your customer is working in that area, it's probably worth having a look. Just look through the agreement and make sure there's nothing there that requires additional. All right. Are there any questions, Tanya? Anything about here that maybe you wanted to ask about or talk about?
No, except for, you know what, I'll just start sharing screen and I'll just bring up and go through that year end real quick while we wait to see if anybody else has any questions to put in there. I know at one point I saw Kristen raise her hand and then it looks like it came back down. So I'm not sure if her question was answered, but this would be great. So here's what I shared. So again, you know, think right in, you know, if there's any questions on here. So essentially this summary we've just done just to see what each of these pages are for. It's great for the accountant as well for us to go through all, you know, what each of these would be. I've added this in. If there's any questions to do with this year end, please direct them to, and you can insert your email address there. And then just please forward the year end adjusting entries and trial balance when you're finished so we can reconcile the trial balance. This, you know, we have a follow-up as well for this, and we do work with some accountants, you know, such as Jonathan's team, that they do that directly. I still like just to go in and just make sure that there's been no changes on our end by just doing a quick reconcile to the trial balance, but that's going to change, you know, depending on the relationship that you have with the accountant and how comfortable the accountant is in the books. Again, because Jonathan's got a bookkeeping team, they're very comfortable working QBO, they do that. So I'm not going to do the year end adjusting entries, and I'm basically just going to be double checking just to make sure nothing, you know, was missed or whatnot. But then we start off double checking the trial balance at the beginning of the year. So if there is any errors, it just kind of, we can catch it here and then here. If there is something that somebody accidentally went in and, you know, typed in with the last year end, again, it just gives us another checkpoint. And that's just something that we like to do. Here is our year-end checklist. So how I've got this separated to into the bookkeeper tasks. So, and this is based on how we work. So individually, we have Leanne and Sandra, and they have their primary file that they work on. And because that's the one they work on primarily, they know it a little bit better. This is just, you know, kind of the stuff that I want them to be able to do before they say, okay, it's ready. So this, of course, is very specific to our software. So please go through this. You are going to need to make any changes to your software, but it's got things like follow the accounts receivable or review the receivable, you know, see if there's anything that needs to be written off and write off per client instructions. So they're just going to tick here when they're done. If there's any applicable notes they want me to see, they're going to put it in here. When they're done with it, we actually do have a subcontractor who works, who is part of our team, Tammy Lee. And so we're calling her the year-end specialist. So she comes in, and with her experience, she's got like 35 years bookkeeping and 4 to 5 years towards for her CGA. So she can look at it from a different opinion. And she actually helped me working with this as well as my experience from Jonathan, because she kind of knows, again, better than I might, what they're looking for. So this, she would then go in and do a double check. And this is where we're comparing the year-end trial balance just to make sure there's no changes. And then, you know, we're going to go through, and again, she's, you know, reviewing the AR tab again. So although it's been done up top, there really should be nothing. But if you look here, she's actually making notes now to as to if there's any material difference, why is there a difference? Because that's one thing that I've learned that, Jonathan or any other accountant is going to be questioning, why is there a difference, on that? Was there something that has changed? So I've got the year-end specialist doing this, and she's basically going through the full balance sheet and the P&L. And then I just do a quick review, and senior bookkeeper, in this case is me. I just do a quick review of a few things and then sign it all off. When you go into the trial balance tab, these tabs are all blank because all we're doing is copying the reports and putting them in here. So when the reports go in here, I'm going to copy the trial balance. That's going to go in here as of year end. If there are any changes after this is in here, you have to remember to go back and put the new one on. The balance sheet, we're going to copy the comparative balance sheet, and then we're going to add another column right after that says Tanya's notes, or notes to Tanya and notes to accountant. So this is where Tammy can put any notes to me that I can then go and review it before it goes off to the accountant. Then I delete my notes and then rectify any notes to the accountant. So that's all we're doing, is copying that over and then adding those two columns. Same thing with the P&L. It's a comparative year over year to the PL so that we can see the difference. So that, again, we can be answering those questions as to why is there a difference. If sales are down and AR is up, why? It might strictly be because of COVID. But again, we know that they need to know this. This is something that, again, I've learned they're looking for. So if we answer it proactively, we don't have to spend all that time going back and forth and answering it again. Here, we're just going to put a copy of the AR list. And again, any notes if, maybe if the payment was received after the year end, or note reviewed, we're not writing off, just anything like that. And same thing with the AP, and then a copy of the fixed assets here. And then, of course, we have the folder that we're putting backup copies of everything in, but you'll see that in here for like insurance and all the assets and charitable donations. Do we have that backup in there, as well as the year end and the subsequent reconciles and bank rec. So it's essentially really, really detailed. So this is how we work it. So hopefully that'll help. Again, this is specific to, we have a list from auto review. It is specific to our flows. So it will take a little bit of editing for you to make it specific for your flows, but not much. I'd say maybe 5% of this would be specific to that. And the whole rest of the process is very general. Did you kind of find the same thing about that percentage, Jonathan, when you were going through maybe?
Yeah, I was going to say there were some big takeaways we had for this that I really liked.
Okay.
So one is this is specific to QBO. And I think if you're doing a checklist like this, you might need a different checklist for a different platform. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
One thing. Yeah, and then review opening balance equity. I mean, we know when we connect a bank account, QuickBooks will try and force in an entry there. So you need to review that, make sure it makes sense, and it probably shouldn't be an opening balance equity. Another thing that really stood out to me for this is it would really help your customer be compliant. So you're asking for things that, even though you might not be using them in your day-to-day, like for instance, I know there was incorporation papers here. I thought minutes was in here somewhere, but like these kind of things, they're legally required, right? You have to have a corporate record book, and it has to be updated every year. So are things where you can actually add extra value.
And if the minutes aren't here, then they should be added in here. Because you're right. That's yeah, absolutely. And the copied incorporation papers, we actually get that right in the beginning, because now we know you guys need it. It does confirm for us exactly the mailing address and who the directors are and whatnot. So we're not going back to the client and asking them for that again, because we have a copy. We're just pulling it over from where we have it, but making sure, because what happens if it's a new accountant? What happens if, maybe, Jonathan can't find his copy? I would rather give him a copy and, him say, oh, you know what? No, I've already got it. I don't need it, but thanks anyway. Rather than have to come back with us, pause the work on the file, come back to us, have it from us, go back to him, and then get back on his list, right? It just makes things more efficient.
Another area that we're finding a lot of deficiencies in the shareholder register. So there's no share certificates issued. The legal documentation doesn't cover who owns the company. There's no shareholder register. Who owns the company? That's pretty important to know. So these are some areas where there can be an extra little bit of added value, just to encourage your customer to be compliant in these realms. There were a couple of things that came through that I'd like to address. Mel was asking for an accountant in her area. Mel, I don't know where you live, so let me know, and maybe I can make a recommendation.
Sorry, and just a couple of people have asked where the document was shared. It's actually, if you just look up through the chat, it's in there. So look for me, there's an Excel and you can download it from there.
Okay. And then there's a couple items in the Q&A. To everyone. What? Oh, interesting. A lot of people aren't seeing. So Stacy, I don't understand your question. And Amy says, I'm not able to see that in the chat. I'm assuming you're talking about the spreadsheet. The timestamp on it was.
Yeah, I put it to hosts and panelists, not to everybody. That might be why.
Okay.
All right, guys. See, this is what, don't stay quiet about this type of stuff, because just not be okay. Because let me try, I have to close this to try to upload it. We'll pull it over and try and share it to everybody. Okay, it should be there now. Yeah, lots of people questioning that. So hopefully you guys, okay, we see it now. Perfect. Thank you.
So any questions from the group? Anything that we can answer about why accountants behave the way they do, perhaps when it comes to an audit or review, or the new Csrs 4200, or financial information versus financial statements, anything. Happy to answer some questions. Okay. Crickets. Well, I'm glad everybody understands this thoroughly.
Now, I don't know, I'd love to get on here. Sandra, I'm going to put you on the spot and pull you in as a panelist just for a quick moment. Because of course, we've come up with this, and then Sandra got to use it. And then when Tammy Lee was off last year for a couple of months from surgery, Sandra kind of got to go through everything, and we didn't really get a chance to train her on it, and she was kind of thrown into it. So how was that experience from you? And you're muted too, by the way, Sandra, from working on it and going through it as a person on the file, and be honest.
Honestly, I actually found it fairly simple. There was a few things that, of course, I had questions about because I had never done it and because I'm still just learning. But it was very, very, very easy to follow that checklist. It was pretty detailed. I will say, I think you said about the minutes, and I'm positive that is not on that checklist. So you may want to throw that in there. But yeah, it was fairly simple just to pull everything in and through and make my notes and do what I needed to do.
Awesome.
It was pretty dummy proof, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, this has been pretty much years of collaboration with multiple people, because again, it started with Jonathan, and then, with myself, some of the boot camp, ladies, and then, bring Tammy and Lee in, and then back and forth. And then as, we've been working on it, and then send back to Jonathan again. So like, it's been a lot of people have looked at it and had their say in it. And oops, time to take my meds. And I'm sure this probably will still be tweaked. So again, add the minutes in. I will add the minutes in, add minutes. And of course, most accountants, and I know, Jonathan, you guys can help with the minutes if they don't have it. So it's not a big deal if the client doesn't, because if it's just themselves, I just happen to have gone, and it's easy for me. And that's maybe where you saw it on my year end, because I had it in there potentially for that, but I basically just purchased for, I don't know, $50, $100, whatever it was, one of these minute things that I just download and I just kind of update every year, because it's just me. I'm just sitting here talking to myself, So it's pretty easy, but yeah, I do know that that is a service that Jonathan does offer. And so whether you're using Jonathan or a different accountant, I'm sure, I mean, some may not offer that. That's up to them, but.
There's one thing I gotta be very clear about when it comes to the minutes. There's no requirement that they have to be done by a lawyer. So the business owner could do them like you do, Tanya, or you can seek the assistance of a paralegal, accountant, whatever. But if you are helping your customer with that, and when we help our customer with that, we are very, very clear that we are not lawyers. If you don't tell us about something, we can't include it. If there is an unusual situation, you should probably seek legal counsel. You know what you need from our conversation before recording, you need legal counsel anyway. We're finding also too a lot of problems because people got together, started a company with a 50-50 split. Terrible way to structure a company, by the way, because things can completely freeze if the shareholders don't agree, and no shareholder loan or no shareholder agreement. So there's no clear exit path if a disagreement starts to happen. So again, legal advice costs a lot up front, but it can really save a ton of headaches.
Well,
And we've
yeah,
seen companies completely implode from lack of legal advice.
And I think like the first one was like from Law Depot or something like that I purchased,
Yeah.
really in-depth one. And then I just have a general one. But yeah, you were able to come back and tell me, okay, you know what, maybe, put in because of, any SUs or this or whatever it was. You're like, don't forget, you should probably put this and this in there. But I've just got a really basic company. And, but again, the first one, no, the very first one, because I had no idea how to structure it. If you go again to the Law Depot or something like that, it'll say is the first one. And the first one that you can download is like, I don't know, 50 pages, but it is not, it does take time. Or again, you go see a lawyer. It just depends on how valuable you feel your time was. I like to learn things and like to know things. So therefore I went through it and okay, this would be applicable in this case. And this would only be applicable in this case. And, so on down, or maybe it was from like the same place I registered the corporation. I can't even remember where it was, but it was really in depth. And then now I just have the basic ones. But you're right. If there's something different, something changes, absolutely. And just like with anything, with us as bookkeepers as well, we're going to tell them this does not replace legal advice. You do have to be careful of that. This is just general. It does not replace legal advice. And if somebody said to me that they didn't have minutes or a minute book or didn't know, I actually wouldn't go further into that conversation, help them with that. That's not something within my comfort level. I would say, you know what, that's a conversation you can have with the accountant, and the accountant may recommend that you do see a lawyer for it. And then let the accountant make that decision. I'm not going there with that. I only go there with my own file, and that's it. I wouldn't go there with the client's file. So it would just be strictly, do they have minutes? Yes or no? And then
are they up to date?
In talking, are they up to date? Exactly.
Yeah, they're legally required to be kept. So it is something that we see a lot of deficiency on. And you don't need them till you need them.
Well, and one thing
right?
that
And that's kind of part of the problem.
Well, one thing that you told me that I didn't know either is I thought the minutes had to be before the year end. No, they can be after the year end and the tax return and after the conversation with the accountant. I'm like, okay, that's good. I don't have to print it and sign it now. I can
usually part of it is approving the financial statements in the tax return.
Yeah.
Approving the financial information. Those kind of things are there too. So
yeah.
Do we have a minute still? Oh, we're 5 after. Is it okay if I mention something else a little newish?
Yeah, because it'll still be recorded. So if anybody has to hop off, it'll be on the recording when I send that out.
I just wanted to say, like, there has been some progress made with QBO WordPaper. However, if you are doing stuff in your QBOA account in that WordPaper, it will not be viewable by an accountant who you invite to that company.
It's still not.
Okay. It's not viewable, and there were concerns about the proprietary information. Now, you could upload that stuff and just download the zip file and give them the whole zip file, because that should include your notes, all your documents you added, all those things. Again, the groupings and statements, there's still a bit of an issue with that, so I don't rely on those for producing financial statements, but you can get a lot of the other stuff really well done there, and then the accountant can go and update the tax mapping and stuff.
All right, perfect.
This was good.
And yeah, it was good. So I just want to make sure I'm going through here. Charlene, did you get the checklist now? She said she still can't see it. If you can just let me know if you did. She still didn't get it. Okay, I'm going to upload it again right now to everyone. So it should be in the chat. And it should be right below your no. So if you can just see, if you see that, to be able to download it. And then just let me know if you can access that. And it does say to everyone this time. I looked. Excuse me.
Tanya, where's Mel located?
I don't know.
Victoria. You might consider, I don't know if Chris was it Leading Ledgers, Christian and Tanya. I'm not sure if they're doing corporate tax or not.
I'm not sure. I know they're on the island.
I know they do personal tax.
Yeah. Okay.
I know a fair number of bookkeepers out there, but not accountants. I think Christian is the only CPA I know of that way.
Okay, so Shalyn, I will email it to you. Sorry, because she still can't see it. I'm going to email it to you directly from support@mycbs.ca. I will be able to go in and send it to the email address you've registered with this. I'll pull that from the report and I'll email it there. And if there's nothing, then just reach out and contact me. But like I say, give me, sometime this afternoon for sure. I'll try and do it right away. But yeah, if the lawyer calls, I have to drop everything to take that lawyer call. So yeah. And I'm just trying to think of who else is over there on the island.
Like bookkeepers wise, there's Bonfire, there's Nadine. I know I'm
yeah, and
missing.
there's Sherry's up in Courtney. Sherry Lee's up in Courtney. Sherry Lee Mathers. But again, she doesn't do taxes. Bori was on the call.
But they might have a tax accountant who's more local.
Yeah. So there's that. I know Sherry Lee knows a lot of them right there. Again, Leanna Butcher knows a lot of them. Oh, she's Vancouver, so he's back on the island. Yeah, there's a few. So you know what? Just reach out to local bookkeepers and just see who they work with. And that's, because if you don't have any direct experience, that's what I would recommend is see if they're good to work with. And, reaching out to local bookkeepers, somebody that you know and that you trust the opinion of, I think is absolutely great. And that's how when people reach out to me, again, whether it be a client or anybody else, it's the same thing. It's, we do have, there's Jonathan, and the other one is the licensed public accountant. He is an LPA as well. So again, there's two different things on two different needs for the two that we kind of work more closely with, and they both work very differently. And again, are going to be different personality types for, the clients. And so, yeah, so
we've definitely encountered that. So we have a newer tax accountant, and definitely very different personalities. And it's going to be interesting, but I can't do everything if I want the company to grow. So we had to hire somebody, and I'm grateful he brings more experience than I have to the table, and a lot of very specific experience in niches that we serve. So I'm very excited to have him as part of the team. Some of you might know him. His name's Darren, and he's been to a lot of the events. Darren Krieger. He's been to a lot of the events.
No, I don't know him. I didn't realize that. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. All right.
Okay, well, that's great. And then, yeah, Charlene, I'll get that out to you shortly. If there's any other questions, anybody can reach out. The recording to this, I'll be sending it out with my link from it, but I do also send this to Jonathan now that he's got his YouTube channel, so it will be on both. So if you want, if there's anything, sorry,
we can't upload to the YouTube channel because it's your proprietary. We'll talk about that later, but it will not be on our YouTube channel, but we will promote it on social media.
Oh, not even with permission?
Yeah, they'll flag it because it's the identical content. They'll flag it as plagiarism and suspend our account.
Okay, well, we'll figure that out. But anyway, yes. So if you're sending it out, please, hashtag. Now we do have that in the back end. We do have that built in the back end, the tags when we upload to make sure. But I'll always make sure, because again, and Jonathan runs these, I really do nothing. I throw the polls in and I throw in the talking points, if there's something that comes up, but this is all Jonathan's work and his baby. And he works very, very hard and volunteers his time to make sure that we can do these and have all of this information. So again, you're sharing it, like make sure to, tag him in it as well too. If you're sharing it out, please make your hashtag whatever. Yeah, or if you watch Cobra Kai, hash browns. Those hash browns. You still have to watch that, Jonathan. I'm telling you.
I do.
Anyway, okay, so thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.